Hi everyone, today's lecture is going to be about psycholinguistics. So psycholinguistics is the subfield of linguistics that's interested in questions like how do we process language and how is language represented in our minds? So I've talked about what's going on in our minds quite a bit throughout this course, but we haven't been very specific about it. So we've talked a lot about how we have, I always talk about these abstract representations. Those are phonemes or morphemes. And that's what we think is stored in our minds, and that's different from the allomorphs or the allophones, which are the surface forms. That's what's actually pronounced, right? So if we think a little bit more globally about what's got to be stored in our minds, we have to have the words, we have to have pronunciations associated with meanings for any word we want to say, right? So you have this cute little fuzzy thing, and we know that that's pronounced cat. It's pronounced starting with a voiceless velar stop, ends with a voiceless alveolar stop. We know how dog is pronounced. We know how pie is pronounced. And we also know that there's morphemes like a plural morpheme, of which the underlying form is Z, which means more than one. And altogether, we can think of this collection of meanings and pronunciations as sort of a dictionary. And this dictionary is called the mental lexicon. So it includes meanings and pronunciations of all words and morphemes, sort of. So I'll talk about that later. So one question psycholinguists are interested in is how is the mental lexicon structured? So let me give you two possible options here. So let's just take sort of a toy example. One option is that we literally store every word and its meaning. So you have a dictionary entry, a lexicon entry, cat, and you know that that's that cute fuzzy thing with pointy ears, and you know how it's pronounced. Then you also have a separate entry, cats, which means multiple cute fuzzy things with two pointy ears. You have an entry dog, which means the thing that barks. Notice I don't say it's cute, I'm a cat person. And that's separate from dogs, which is multiple things that bark. And in this, so that's the first model. Another option, though, is that we have a word for cat, same as before, but we don't actually have a word for cats. We have a word for dog, but we don't have a word for dogs. Instead, we store this plural morpheme, and that can be combined with any of these if we want to talk about more than one of something. So which of these models do you think is more plausible? So I'm actually not going to give you an answer to this because we don't know the answer, but you can think about it. There's good arguments for either way, but this is a question it's not actually clear what the answer is, but it's something that psycholinguists look at. Another way, in this sense, one way we can talk about lexical organization is what are the units of representation? Are they individual words, or are they, so is every single word represented, or do we sort of have the minimal number of morphemes needed that we can use to recombine and represent all of the words we want to say? So this one is a little more efficient. There's fewer entries for the same number of words, right, in Model 2. Another way we can talk about the organization of the lexicon is how are different words connected, if they are? So we have a word lion, and it has something in common with some other words like cat or animal. It might remind you of Disney's The Lion King, a movie. It might remind you of Maine. However, there also might be connections between lion and the sounds that are in it. In other words, lion and the phoneme L. And what do I mean by there are connections? Well, I'm not going to say exactly what I mean by it right now, but if you just think in your real life, like sometimes when you're not able to think of a word, but you can think of like part of it, or you can think of the first sound, that's one piece of evidence that these things might be connected. Line and line might be connected. So there's different ways things can be connected, and we'll talk about how people look into that in a little bit. So in psycholinguistics, just like we talked about this already a little bit in child language acquisition, we can talk about naturalistic or experimental methods. So naturalistic methods are just like before. They're any methods where you're just observing real life behavior. This can also be called field methods. And a lot of early naturalistic psycholinguistic research comes from studies of slips of the tongue, or speech errors. So one kind of famous kind of speech error is called a spoonerism. So examples, if you accidentally said, "You've hissed all my mystery lectures," instead you've missed all my history lectures. What's going on here? Well, it turns out that when there's substitutions like this, they don't seem to be random. So if you look at the specific substitutions in these examples, instead of missed in history, the person said hissed in mystery. And instead of wasted in term, they said tasted in worm. So what does this tell us? Like, what can we actually figure out about this? Well, first of all, this is evidence that actually words can be divided into different segments. And that might seem really obvious to you because we've been talking from day one about phonemes, but it wouldn't have to be that way, right? Like, you could just store words as a unit and not be able to break them down into segments. But the fact that there seems to be this segment switching going on in natural behavior is evidence that segments are a real thing. Another thing that this tells us is that sentences have to be planned in advance. Notice that in order to say, so since these sentences are switched, so in the first example here, they pronounced missed with an H and history with an M. And so they're switched, right? And so this means that by the time the person was saying missed, they must have already been thinking about the end of the sentence. Or else why would they have randomly put an H there? So the fact that these aren't random means that the sentences have to be planned in advance. And again, this is what I mentioned first. Actually, this gives evidence for the psychological reality of the phoneme. In other words, somewhere in our representation, words must be made up of separate sounds, or else how could individual sounds be switched? So just to give an example of this, it's possible that words are just stored completely independently. You have cat and you have cap, and there's nothing inherently in common about these two things. However, another option is that actually this word cat, it's linked instead to segments k, a, and t. And the word cap is linked to segments k, a, and p. So again, these aren't completely separate things, but cap and cat share something in common because they're actually linked to the same sounds. Okay, so that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about naturalistic methods today. So speech errors and other naturalistic studies can tell us something about language production and speech processing, but because these are naturally occurring, researchers don't have control over when they occur, and you just have to wait for them to happen. And I mean, people make a lot of mistakes, but sometimes you want a little bit more than that. So experiments allow researchers to test specific questions by examining how listeners respond to different experimental manipulations. And before I talk about specific types of experiments, let's talk about the components of a psycholinguistic experiment. So just to give you some vocab, the stimuli, that refers to what participants are seeing or hearing. I should mention one important component is participants. So you have to have somebody participating in your experiment, right? And then you're going to be either showing them or playing them usually some sounds, and those are the stimuli. You want to define a task, so what are they going to be doing? And then also you want a dependent variable, and what the dependent variable is that's what you're measuring. So I'm going to break these things down. I'm going to describe to you 4 different psycholinguistic experimental tasks. And the 4 tasks I'm going to show you are lexical decision, identification, discrimination, and priming.